Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast, where every week we talk about things like nutrition, training,
how to live a healthy and active lifestyle with your little ones, peaceful parenting, education,
and of course, mindset.
Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Keto Counterculture, at fatfueledmom, and at fatfueledkids, and search for Fat Fueled Family on YouTube.
To stay up to date with everything we're doing, sign up with your email at www.fatfueled.family and check out our blog for workouts, meal ideas, and all the other cool stuff we love to talk about.
Don't forget to hit subscribe.
Welcome to the Fat Fueled Family Podcast. I am Danny, and I'm joined by my wife, Maura. And wow, that was a funny smile that she just gave me. We're really excited today because we get to talk to an RD and we get to talk about all the cool stuff that we've been really thinking about lately. You know, the evolution of just our dietary philosophy and how as you learn more, you know, you learn better, you learn more and you do better. But before we get to that, we want to just give a few announcements. First of all, as you all know, the Fat Fueled Family Program, of course, is live. And we wanted to share something with you guys. All our podcast listeners, we have a 10% discount code for you guys, and that's Fat Fueled Fam. So if you enter Fat Fueled Fam at checkout, you'll get 10% off that the program bundle, and that is available at www.killingitfatfueled.com. That's killing it without a G. And the other thing that I'm super excited about, because I know a lot of people were asking about it after Maura put out her glute program, everybody was asking about upper body stuff to do with the glute program. Some people tried to use some of my other programs and try to mix and match, but Maura has finally put out the upper body program, and that's live in our online shop. Lots of awesome feedback on the glute program. So I know you guys are going to love this. I think it's going to go perfectly with it. It's $49.99 for both programs separately or $79.99 for the bundle. As you guys know, Maura's programs are awesome. She basically, the exercise selection is a lot more varied than I do. Why don't you talk a little bit about it, my love?
Yeah, so it's for the upper body, it's going to be 2 days a week, and the glute program is 3 days a week. So that'll give you a good 5-day gym program, and it pairs perfectly. And it's, if for anyone who's already bought my glute program and has done it, it's pretty much the same template, like the same style, right?
Different workouts every week.
Right. So there's different workouts and every workout is different. However, there is still structure. There's going to be, you will see the structure. There's still a plan, but I do switch it up with the exercises that you will be doing so you don't get bored. That's just how I personally like to work out, and it's worked for me. So,
yep.
And so I hope you guys love it. And if you like the glute program, you're going to really, really enjoy this one, and can't be neglecting your upper body, ladies. I see a lot of girls just working out their lower body, and guys can do that with their legs,
Yep.
Don't skip leg day, guys, and girls don't skip upper body day. So you want to have a well-balanced physique, and just overall strength. It's very important for longevity. And just as we get older, we don't want to worry about bone density and stuff like that. So
yep,
check it out.
Yes.
I will link all of this stuff in the show notes.
In the show notes, Yep. So this week's guest has been a registered dietitian since 2009 with extensive consultation experience in all aspects of health and nutrition. Her general areas of expertise include weight management, digestive disorders, disease management and prevention, and healthy aging. She's an ultramarathoner with a passion for nutrition as it relates to training, fueling, recovery, and competition day. And at the risk of butchering the last name, I should have asked her before we came on. I'm going to go with, so it's Brittany, and is it Michels or Michels?
Yes, Michels.
Michels. Okay, Brittany
It.
Michels.
I know.
How you doing, Brittany?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. We were talking before we got on the air about Brittany's joining us from, is it Algonquin?
Yes, Algonquin.
Algonquin, Illinois. Sunny Algonquin.
Sunny Algonquin, right?
Yeah, I was, when I was in high school, I was getting recruited by a bunch of schools, and one of the schools was a little school out in Wheaton College. How far is that from you?
It's about 45 minutes.
Okay. Are you 45 minutes further away from Chicago, or are you closer to Chicago?
Yeah, we are definitely in the burbs.
So you're about an hour and a half or so from Chicago?
Yeah, I would say like hour 15
Okay.
It's like
very cool.
It's like northwest of Chicago.
Okay.
There's a bunch of beautiful, beautiful towns up there. Are you in like farmland? Because I did a week in Illinois when I was back when I was a medical device rep for training, and there was a lot of farmland.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Very cool. So
Lots
we
of
always
running
lead.
potential, right?
Yes.
How's
exactly.
the landscape? Is it hilly? Is it flat?
I grew up in Cincinnati, and it's very hilly down there. And then not to jump into bio, but I went to Bowling Green State University for my undergrad. And I remember training for my first marathon there, and it was 0 across the board, no movement at all. And so you find pockets up here with hills. Nothing comparable to mountains or anything, but definitely more hills than college days.
Yeah, we're in Florida, so it's flat. It's very flat.
It's miserably flat.
I see a hill and I'm like, yes. I'm so excited about it.
Right.
Yeah, we have like a runoff in our neighborhood, and that's like and that's what we call our hill. So we'll do hill sprints on that with the boys and stuff. Very cool. So we always lead with the question, what is the most critical problem you're currently trying to solve?
I was flipping around with a couple different ideas, but I would say about 85% of my clients come in with inflammation, and most don't even realize they have inflammation until we tweak diet and supplements and they realize they feel like a new person. And a lot of disease reversal and management comes from managing inflammation. So I would say that's my go-to problem is inflammation.
I would agree.
Yeah, it's crazy because, and I love that the medical community is finally waking up to this, because everything used to be centered around genetics, right? I mean, cancer, all of these other diseases. And it was like, well, there's nothing you can do. You got bad genetics. When I was in grad school, one of my favorite classes was cardiopulmonary pathologies. And I remember my professor was also my advisor. And he basically said something to the extent of, well, if you don't got a good endothelium, if your endothelium is poor, then you're kind of screwed no matter what. And now with the rise of epigenetics and showing all the things that we can do, and I've seen it in my own life where my 23andMe comes back and I've got all these terrible SNPs, and they're not expressing themselves because of my lifestyle. Right. So it's kind of encouraging to see that you can take charge, and obviously under the supervision of someone such as yourself, people can finally change those things, and they're not screwed.
Absolutely. Yeah, I had a nutrigenomics class in my master's program, and there was obviously topics we just didn't dive into as much in our undergrad, and it's definitely the future. So I'm looking forward to seeing what's standard moving forward versus a specialty and having to go out and find it.
Yeah, and I actually have in my right here on my desk, I have this a kit for epigenetics, epigenetic testing, which is way behind genetic testing. But I have that there, and I'm going to fill that out to see like what comes back. Because we have a really good friend. I don't know if you've ever heard of Anthony J. He's an epigeneticist, Dr. Anthony J. He's out at the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, and he's just he's the expert when it comes to this stuff, and it's just so encouraging, and it happens so quickly, right? These epigenetic changes, they can happen very quickly.
Right.
Things get turned off and turned on. So I think that's a good problem to solve. I think we need all hands on deck for that.
Yes, right. And it certainly influences education. So we have standard education, in my clinical experience in the hospital, is if this disease state pops up, this is the very specific diet instructions you provide. And that's not how things go. If you really look at in the nutrigenetics classes, just one genetic change would completely change diet recommendations. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot more standardized, right?
Exactly. We are very behind with getting personalized with our recommendations.
Absolutely. But it's so encouraging to hear that RDs such as yourself and some others that we know are starting to change the way that we treat patients and more of a functional medicine approach instead of just putting Band-Aids on the problem and setting people off with prescriptions.
Looking for a root cause.
Root cause. Yeah. And then it empowers the patient as well. You're empowering the person to get to know themselves and get to know how about their body and the different things that they need to do to make their body thrive. So that's just encouraging.
Absolutely.
Well, let's get into just like a quick bio about, your road to becoming an RD and what you do in your profession on a day-to-day.
Yeah, I'll try to be quick with this because I have been very many places since I started. But when I was in high school, I wanted to go to culinary school. And
cool.
Yeah, I loved cooking, and I would just beg my parents for like Cooking Club of America membership and like recipe books. And I just loved that. And my first job in high school was at a long-term care facility. And I was one of the girls in the scrubs, like scraping plates, and helping everybody get fed. And there is when I really had some eye-opening moments where I realized that those that were able to eat lived longer than those that didn't. And you would think that's a very simple concept, but we don't see that necessarily nowadays because most people can get sick and they get better and they can eat or not eat and they generally are okay, right? It's in those extreme populations where you see how important food is. So I was introduced to my first dietitian in high school at that job, and I realized I could mix my love for cooking in with actually educating and helping people stay alive. So again, very extreme. So like I said, I was born and raised in Cincinnati, went to Bowling Green State University in Northern Ohio for undergrad. For my dietetic internship, I got into Henry Ford Health System in downtown Detroit. And after my internship, I sat for my national exam in Michigan and practiced there for almost 10 years. And in early 2017, I moved to Chicago, where I currently am. So in Michigan, I was in the hospital, I was in long-term care, home care, I was doing corporate wellness, so weight loss classes and cooking classes. I was doing K-5 programs for the kids.
Ooh, very cool. We're going to have to come back to that later. Yeah.
So, I sports nutrition wise, I was in several gyms doing nutrition consultations for athletes. And I had a big running community in Michigan, like as an ultra marathoner, and running for charity. I had a lot of runners specifically that I would work with for like pre, during, and post race training. And then here, the biggest pull to step out of like the clinical setting was that I saw with everything that I learned with just running and learning about myself that we could manage disease states outside of medicine or in conjunction with medicine. And in the clinical atmosphere, it was medication only. And that standard meal plan and less one-on-ones. So there wasn't a lot of follow-up. It was like, here's a do not eat list. And it was completely different coming into the vitamin shop. There's 16 of us in the nation, and like randomly Algonquin, here I am. But I provide one-on-one nutrition consultations in store. I provide a personalized meal plan, and I see follow-ups. And I have supplements galore around me, and everyone's different with what they need. So I can literally sit down with everyone, go through their diet, their day, their medication, supplement, exercise regimen, sleep, stress, literally go through every point, and everyone gets a completely different recommendation list and meal plan based off of their needs. So completely different than my clinical experience. But of course, clinical gave me a lot of knowledge with, I can read any labs that you put in front of me. I was doing high-risk tube feed orders and dialysis patients. Like I was doing very high-risk settings at that time. Right. And that's all helped me to educate and see where we need to put focus on now.
And with Vitamin Shop, because how does that work? Is that something that the person comes into Vitamin Shop, and how are they made aware of your services that you provide? Is that something that they book online?
Yes. So right now, because there's 16 of us in the nation, the closest to me is in Pasadena, California, and in Pennsylvania. So I am in the only one. I guess Texas is central, the central time zone. So we have a Texas nutritionist as well. But most are on the East Coast, so New Jersey, New York, South Carolina, and we're spread out a little bit. But only those that are in the area that could come in for a consultation can book right now. We have 2 virtual nutritionists, but you can imagine how many Vitamin Shop customers there are. So mostly like those that have auto delivery set up are able to see a virtual nutritionist. But right now we have flyers in store, and then we have an online scheduler. So anybody can jump on and schedule a day and time that works for them. And our stores, where the dietitians and nutritionists are, have a cooking demo table in the middle of the store. And so that's where we conduct consultations, and we also conduct weekly workshops. So last night I had a keto workshop, and I prepared a keto recipe, and then went through the specifics of keto tips, and then any nutritional deficiencies that pop up with keto, just to make sure that everyone's supplementing properly while they're on the diet. So those workshop titles change every week.
That's so interesting. That's really cool. And I to touch on, like, it's funny that you say, I know I have a friend who's a dietitian, and I see that a lot. Like, a lot of dietitians also have a love for cooking and creating food. So I see that a lot. And it's a really cool way to use your love of food, but to also educate, and work with patients and help people, teaching them how to use food as medicine. So, but that's so interesting that you say that. So, about keto, you said some nutritional deficiencies, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because whenever someone messages me and says, I do keto and this is the whatever problem that I'm seeing or I'm stalling, I always say, well, how do you keto? Because there's so many ways to keto. Ketosis is a state, the Diet Coke is keto. There's a lot of things that are keto. Hot dogs are keto. So, what are, what do you advise? Cause we have a lot of ketogenic, listeners. So what would you say are some of the more common, deficiencies, if any, that you see within keto, and what recommendations would you have?
And let's preface this by saying we are not giving medical advice, everybody. We're just, these are, we should have a disclaimer.
We'll put a disclaimer.
Well, in any consultation, we look at, I always break things down by food groups, because it's easy for people to see and understand that. And each food group provides different nutrients. So on keto, we're eliminating the grain group. So our grains generally are high in vitamin Bs. So B vitamins are energy vitamins. So those that go gluten-free or grain-free or go keto, over time, they'll start feeling more fatigue or a lack of energy. So generally, I'm recommending a B complex, unless their multivitamin that they're taking is like awesome and it's super high in Bs. Then you're all set there. We have a lot of clients that are stressed in addition to trying a diet, and Bs can become deficient with stress as well. So that's another one. And then if we have digestive issues along with trying a diet, like more going to the bathroom too much versus the other way, we need more Bs as well, because we just have a hard time absorbing them. So that's the first group that's usually cut with keto, is the grains. We usually minimize our fruit group unless we're like super conscious about the serving size of, say, berries or something like that. And we have a lot of our vitamins in vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin C in our fruits. So a basic multivitamin is another recommendation. Your dairy group really all depends on whether you have a dairy intolerance or whether you feel like you get inflammation with certain dairy products. So everyone's a little bit different with the dairy, but I focus on the vitamin D and the calcium there. Vitamin D, in the Midwest, for sure, most are deficient in by the time mid-January comes around, if they're not already deficient year-round. We make vitamin D in
that
our
is
skin from
an
the
advantage
sun.
we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go outside and we spend a lot of time outside without sunblock, just trying to get out there. We do that with the boys. Obviously, another reason for that is, when they don't have anything to do, they'll want to turn on the TV or something, and we'll say, "Hey, look at how beautiful the day is outside. Let's go outside."
Yeah, for sure. So that's one
and
we definitely don't get up here. I wear sunblock year round. I am a pale redhead, and so
I see your LinkedIn. Your LinkedIn there's some freckles in there in your LinkedIn profile.
So. And it's because it's from all the running. So I sweat as much as I wear sunscreen. So when I sweat enough, I get the freckles. Can't keep the sunblock on. So we need. Definitely, I wear sunblock year round up here. And then in the winter, we have our coats on. Still have foundation on or sunblock on my face. So I usually am supplementing with vitamin D year round. Most of my clients that have lab work, I'd say less than 10% have normal vitamin D levels at any time of the year.
Wow.
Is a very huge issue. And if you think about the importance of vitamin D in all of our metabolic processes, it's a huge thing, especially for those looking to lose weight or even our clients that come in with anxiety and depression. Low vitamin D levels are linked to both of those. So that's a huge nutrient that regardless of keto or not, but especially you would want to make sure that you're on. Calcium, like I said, kind of is dependent on how much dairy you get in. Your cheese usually is always an okay, unless, like I said, you have a dairy intolerance. Those that do keto and get a couple servings of dairy in a day don't need calcium, but if you cut your dairy, you need to supplement with that one. Your electrolytes.
Oh yeah, we're always harping on that one. Yeah.
So that's with any low carb diet, but they call it keto flu for a reason. You start.
Yep.
Everyone has a little bit different symptoms, but you definitely feel like you're coming on with something like that clammy hands, feeling like you're getting sick. And within 15, 20 minutes of taking electrolytes, if you're feeling those symptoms will go away. So I usually just have people be aware of how they're feeling. Hydration, same thing. I always try to explain when we spike insulin levels, we retain fluid, potassium, magnesium, sodium, all of our electrolytes. When we don't have that spike anymore on a low carb, we flush all of those nutrients, all those electrolytes, and fluid. So it's super important. Most when we're thinking about a healthy diet, we're staying away from sodium. So many are surprised that I'm telling them to salt foods and increase those electrolytes.
And it's amazing how quick of a fix it is. It's a really easy fix.
Yes, very easy. And I would say lastly would be your fiber. Most are decreasing their vegetables and fruits enough where they start noticing digestive changes where they're just slowing up a bit. Some get constipated a little bit more. So there's fiber powders, supplements, or if you're just super amazing, you'd be able to have smaller portions of vegetables throughout the day that won't bring you over your carb goals. This is. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think there's a delay, so that's why we have an issue with that. So, what I was going to say is, some of the things that we see, it's the same thing. We've been trying to really, as ketogenic diets grow in popularity, and we have another friend, Ali Miller, who's an RD as well, and we love her message because people, they like it. It's nice that there's a simplified, explanation of what keto is, and people they're always concerned with quantity. So they're like, okay, I need to eat less than this amount of carbs, all of those things, but they don't focus on quality. And that's where the issue starts to happen, where they're not having enough protein, because we see that as well. We see a lot of people
reporting hair loss. Women, a lot of them will be hair loss. I'm your protein. There's some a lot of restriction of protein in the ketogenic community.
Yeah. There's this fear of protein with, I don't know where it got popular. And I understand that the way it started was with, more clinical populations where people are trying to treat epilepsy or other neurodegenerative diseases. But then, if you're talking about a healthy individual who is going to be in a low insulin environment, and the fact that gluconeogenesis, that's a word that people don't understand, they don't understand that gluconeogenesis is the reason we survive on a ketogenic diet. Right. It's always happening. We're using fat to create the glucose that we need. But with protein, it's so much more energy intensive. I think it's 6 ATP to produce one glucose molecule. So, it takes a lot of energy, and you're not going to do that unless you need it. And so what we try to tell people is like with the protein is like, it's like, imagine you're driving by a gas station. It doesn't mean that just because you drive by a gas station, you're going to fill up the gas tank. You're only going to fill up the gas tank if you need it. Right. So you're only going to turn that protein into glucose if your body needs to. So we do see these things popping up. And then, of course, people try a ketogenic diet, for instance, and then they don't do well. But we're just trying to say, okay, if you're going to try it, you got to kind of think about these things. Like you said, the electrolytes are so important, especially at the beginning. I think the research, I've seen 2 separate studies looking at one with potassium and one with magnesium. And it was interesting to note they were both by separate authors. And they noticed that it's really the most important in the first 28 days. And then after that 28 days, I guess your body adjusts to that lower insulin environment and you kind of level off where you're supposed to be. Right. But I personally supplement with magnesium glycinate every single day. Vitamin Shoppe has a lot of these products. Vitamin Shoppe has methylated Bs, which we are huge fans of because we both have the MTHFR mutation. Yep. So
yay.
Yeah, no, it's really, and of course, the other thing with Vitamin Shoppe is that I really love the way they've really just included this whole ketogenic line because, it's nice to go. A lot of people want to just go to their local supplement store and pick some stuff up. And before we didn't kind of have that option. And now they have this whole line. So it's really
Vitamin
our F-bombs, we have F-bombs. Those are the best.
Yeah, right. Vitamin Shoppe is actually who submitted the request for National Keto Day to be a holiday.
Yes, they told me that they reached out to me about it. Yeah, and we were talking all about it. I think what was the charity? It was backpack. Was it backpack?
Blessings in a backpack. Blessings in a backpack.
Blessings in a backpack. That was really cool.
Yeah. Love it.
I don't know if I shared this with you, but I went keto about 3 years ago before it was even a thing. So back in 2015, going into 2016. But I did it for I was training for 100K. And
nice.
Wow. My previous ultra marathons had been obviously carb driven. And I was so sick of waking up after a race feeling like I was in a full body cast, not being able to move. And I was like, there has to be a different way. So after some research, I was introduced to the keto diet and I decided just to give it a go for a season. And I was able to complete my race on a 4th cup of macadamia nuts and electrolyte drink. And I felt amazing the entire time. It was a 17-hour race. And the next day I was able to step into the shower instead of crawling down the wall and swinging my legs over. And I was able to do air squats. Like it was a completely different experience. So that's about when I started really relating carb intake or too much intake on inflammation. And then other disease states, because again, the extremes are where you start learning really what the body's doing, right? So that's when I was in the hospital at the time. And so, of course, there was a lot of doctors and nurses that were like, your cholesterol levels are going to jump up. This is just like ridiculous that you're trying this. And I was like, I have to try it. Like running 63 miles is already obnoxious. So like, who cares that I'm trying this, right? So I got my like lipid profile read like before, during, after. There was no significant changes. Had normal throughout all of it. But I definitely learned a lot about recovery with that alone. And I've never gone back to a normal carb diet since. I've always been pretty low carb since. And I've tried to experiment with carb cycling and putting carbs around my workouts if I needed them. But really anything over a marathon now, I don't need carbs. The carbs I felt like benefited amazing. Quick movements, or if I wanted to try to PR like a half marathon or a marathon, I would need to supplement here and there with carbs just because they're so quick compared to fat conversion. But there's some pretty serious ultramarathoners that are fat adapted or keto that have won races. They're fast.
Oh,
but
yeah.
It takes time to for your body to learn to convert that quickly.
And, some of the things we see it borne out in the research. There's a really good one, the FASTER study, that was in 2016. And that was looking at just energy utilization in these people and how, the typical sugar burner will go up to, let's say 57-60% of their VO2 max using, fat as energy. And then they switch over into glucose. Whereas fat adapted athletes were upwards of 70-75-76% of their VO2 max.
Right.
And the interesting thing was that the glycogen repletion was comparable in the ketogenic group. So it goes to show, like you said, with that long distance, the energy, the speed at which you have to create the energy, is such that, beta oxidation is doing it fast enough, and you're using fat, turning fat into sugar fast enough and of course you're in a fat burning state. Right. But one of the things that, I don't know if you've heard about, we have our good friend, Peter Defty. He's like, when it comes to fat, like optimizing fat metabolism, I really love his approach because he is big fan of keto, but he also says, on race day, anything goes. And that's kind of, the way Zach Bitter does it as well, where he's, you're trying to get the holy grail where you're using, fat as energy, but then on race day, it's amazing how you can eat all those carbs and there's no lag between the minute you run through those carbs that you ate and switching into
you can switch
fat.
in quicker.
And it happened. Yeah. And like for me, I had, I had a 50,000 meter row in April that I did for charity. And, I had 280 carbs the night before. I woke up with my blood sugar slightly elevated at 102 and my ketones were still present. But, awesome. With ketones, that's kind of like, it's kind of like when you have high ketones all the time, they don't just disappear when you have carbs, It takes a while. But what I did was I did the first 37,000 meters fasted. And then I did have like 80 carbs. And then the last 13,000 meters, I did them. And by the end of that, 30 minutes after I finished, my blood sugar was at 68 and my ketones were at 4.4. So it was like, wow. And I felt great.
That's awesome.
I took one day off and I went back. So it is possible to have that best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
But you gotta wait to get fat adapted.
Yeah, absolutely. I ran Chicago Marathon, and a 50K a couple weeks after that, the end of this year. And I always say now, I allow myself to use my own fat stores in the beginning of a race, or at least deplete what I have. If we introduce right away, right? If we introduce our carbs right away, now we are requiring them. Especially if we're not, as you sound like you're definitely adapted. Some can jump in and out super easily. It sounds like you've trained your body well enough to just to be able to do that. Some, the minute they introduce carb, you'll see zero ketones. Like they're done using that pathway. Yeah. So that's awesome that you've been able to see both.
Yeah.
It's definitely
also,
something.
You just have so much muscle too.
Well, I have a lot of muscle, so my body's always kind of like
burning hot. Like at times he's just like he can eat so much.
I have clients that have been doing a lot of carb cycling or keto cycling, mostly like 5 days keto, 2 days high carb day, just so that in a really long endurance race like that, when you really deplete, you wind up instead of hitting a wall with depletion, you're able to jump into that fat usage a lot quicker.
And like you said, it's a lot of trial and error, because I know that, like you said, some people would feel miserable with 2 days of higher carbs, and it would be too much of a lag. But that's when it's possible that you can look at 1 day of carbs or one heavy meal of carbs,
Right.
That's always a possibility. And I think that people, they like to label themselves. They limit things. So they're like, I'm keto now. I can't have a carbohydrate.
Right.
Never, ever, ever. And, we're just like, wait a second, guys, like you're healthy now. You may have been unhealthy before. You had all this inflammation. You're at your goal weight. You're training for something and you want to be competitive. Why not try that? And we're not here advocating for people to have a whole bunch of carbs, but if you're going to do something like that, race day or competition day, at least do a dry run and see if it is a benefit. And if it is, wow, you learned something, you can use those carbs.
Right. Absolutely.
Hey everybody, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to let you guys know about a company we've been a fan of for over a year now. This is a really cool company because number one, they're convenient. They make some delicious products, and they were also so cool when Dean had the accident. They said that's a great care package. The boys love their products. We love their products. They're convenient, and that's Real Good Foods. Real Good Foods has chicken crust pizzas, cauliflower pizzas. They have these awesome enchiladas that the boys love. Good products, low carb, keto friendly. And if you see the comparison compared to actual other packaged foods, there's no comparison. So they have a store locator. They're available at places like Walmart and supermarkets. I've also seen them even at Vitamin Shop, which is pretty cool. And if you wanted to shop for them locally, you can look at the store locator online. But we have a code, and it's FatFueledFam, and that'll give you $10 off your order. So if you're in a time pinch and you don't have time to cook yourself a nice home cooked meal, definitely look into Real Good Foods. They get the Fat Fueled Family seal of approval. And without any further ado, back to our show. So I would love to switch into the microbiome, because this is one of those subjects that's been, talked about for years now. And I think it's still very misunderstood, myself included. There's even, people like there's an interesting paper came out this year looking at how a lot of probiotics have antibiotics in them, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was crazy to see. But what are because we're always thinking about, the microbiome and of course food, but what are some factors of, obviously food, it would be one of them. In your opinion, what are some foods that can, improve or deteriorate gut health? But more important also is what I'm interested in is like all the environmental factors and lifestyle factors that can impact gut health, and what would be some of the supplements, some of the approaches that you would use to help them get back on track?
Sure. So this is a huge topic, and there's so many different things we could talk about on it. So I'm just going to name a few things. So most of my clients that come in with inflammation have a messed up gut. They it could be extreme, like rheumatoid arthritis or lupus, like more extreme inflammatory conditions. Those could be managed or mostly reversed if they fix their gut. So that's a huge one that we focus on first, figuring out what food intolerances that they do have. It's so surprising to me how many clients come in and they've never thought about how they feel after they eat. So just becoming more self-aware. It really is amazing. So I go through like all of the symptoms, like food that's sitting doesn't feel like it's digesting, food that if you normally go to the bathroom every day normally and then all of a sudden you're constipated, potential sign of an intolerance. You feel tired, like you need to go take a nap, and you didn't just eat a whole pizza, for example. That would obviously create that feeling, but just like a normal sized meal and you feel like you need to go lay down, potential sign of an intolerance. A lot of gas or bloating, potential. So I try to go through those symptoms and we start like writing down specific foods. And I do this for the personalized meal plans, but it also gets clients thinking, I try to explain that if we have a food intolerance, even if we have a little bit of it, it can create inflammation, it can create fluid retention, and especially those that are trying to lose weight. If you continue to cycle through inflammation, fluid retention, you're going to be really in such a struggle bus with trying to lose and to keep motivated. You'll see fluctuations on the scale all the time and you'll have no clue what's going on because you're like limiting what, the calories or certain foods, you know what I mean? So I say the intolerances is a huge thing. Inflammatory foods, obviously, when talking about lower carb diet in general, too much sugar, especially added sugar, can be an inflammatory. Chemicals, additives, the artificial colors and sweeteners in our foods, all of those can act as inflammatories.
Yes, we are big on the sweeteners now. That's a big problem in the ketogenic community, unfortunately.
Ketosis has become more important than
everybody's like, they're just replacing sugar with massive amounts of, whether they're artificial or not, because a lot of these, they don't label erythritol or xylitol as artificial.
Right.
It's a processed food.
It is a processed food. And Mauda, I have issues, unfortunately. It's really sad because I love it. But if we go to a local carnival here every year, and there's Polish kielbasa and there's sauerkraut. And the sauerkraut gives me, like, I start sneezing like 15 minutes after.
I told them you have an intolerance to something that's in there. I'm like, there's something weird in there.
Yeah, it's the sauerkraut. It's probably a histamine reaction to the sauerkraut.
Right.
And with Mauda, she did a MRT panel, and
the intolerances, honestly, it's huge. It's huge. Like, I feel like that, and this is where I wish and I hope that we can get to this place where it becomes a normal thing to be able to, because like insurances won't even pay for these tests. That's like the thing, because the doctors aren't going to order them. So I, paid cash. Thankfully, my friend could just get it for me at cash price because she's an RD, and I just did it on my own. I did an MRT panel, and man, it's like incredible how much better I feel.
Right.
I felt like all the little things,
and a lot of them are health foods.
And a lot of them are health foods, like onion.
Tuna,
that one's actually
turkey,
really sucky because it's really hard to avoid onion.
Cumin.
Yeah, cumin, turkey was one. And like, now that I know, it's like, I wasn't like, the turkey was one of like the most craziest examples because I mean, turkey, you would never think, and as I was waiting for my results, I was eating turkey that entire week, and I had the most massive, and I had the most massive headache. And like, people shake these things off and they don't realize that it could be
especially women, because there's it must be
I got a
something
headache, it must be hormonal.
Exactly, right.
And as my friend sent me my results, I was literally eating turkey in that moment, and I was like, this is why I've had a headache all week. This is so bad. And it's just so funny, like the different reactions. Like, and so now that I've known my results for at least quite some time at the point, like it's been almost a year maybe, but I'm so much more in tune, and I know like exactly which foods cause me which, like the type of reaction. That some of them give me a headache, some of them will give me GI trouble, some will make me tired, and like that feeling of like you can't digest something, or then my mood will take a hit. It's just crazy.
It's a huge game changer to know your list of foods.
It is.
Yeah.
So I try to teach that at consultations, or at least start the conversation. I have 90-year-olds. Doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are.
Yeah.
Many have never thought about how they feel with food. And like you said, there's so many different symptoms. It could be headache. It could be GI issues. It could be anything, really. It's not all like my stomach hurts. That's not necessarily an intolerance. So those conversations are interesting. But if you think about inflammation would then increase permeability of the gut, and a lot of inflammation that stems from gut can then go other places. So my like arthritic clients, for example, who fix their gut have less symptoms elsewhere. So it's amazing the relationship. I've had a lot of clients, again, that are on high doses of antidepressant or anti-anxiety medication. And once they fix their gut, they have halved or almost completely nixed their medications.
Oh, I believe that.
So I feel like that, like I said in the beginning, inflammation, but especially our gut. It's crazy. So really anything added, any processed food has to have things added to it for it to be able to sit on a shelf for a year. So I always have people reading labels and trying to just understand what they're putting in their bodies. Stress is the other huge factor that affects our gut. Many that have serious digestive issues like Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, just severe digestive issues. Most of them, I would say like 85 to 90% have unmanaged stress.
Right, because we hear a lot of the stress not only could cause, increase the permeability, but it also sterilizes you, right? Because you start to, I'm not sure how it works, but it does kill off good bacteria. Mm-hmm. Stress is that powerful.
Yep, it is. So a lot of our good bacteria are lost with stress. So we try to work on foods, but we also have supplements that help to counteract inflammation, that help to counteract stress, or even the hormonal effects that then impact our bodies. So like supplements for inflammation, I'm a huge fan of turmeric. I used to work with a surgeon that only recommended turmeric post-surgery. So he'd do, for example, a shoulder replacement. He wouldn't provide any anti-inflammatories, no pain medication. He was doing high doses of turmeric. So I'm a huge fan of turmeric for honestly any inflammatory anything. There's very few allergies that I've seen over the years with turmeric. I've gotten up to 8,000 and 9,000 milligrams in a day post-race when I'm really inflamed, and that's how I manage. I don't take any pain medication. So I'm a huge turmeric fan. Those that need help.
So that's about close to two teaspoons, right? Because it would be 10 grams. Yeah, 10 grams would be...
well, I guess it depends on the pill.
Yeah, that's why the silence was me thinking about...
So
yeah,
because a teaspoon is 5 grams, so that's about 5,000
I have some
milligrams.
capsules, the Inflammazyme that Allie had given us for my son's accident. We would have to see the dose.
Yeah, so most capsules are between 500 and 900 milligrams. Vitamin Shop is the highest I've seen. They have a 900 milligram capsule.
Nice.
But turmeric... they're all standardized differently. So they have different amounts of the active curcumin. And so the higher curcumin, the less you would need. So like a lot of spice companies they send the active to supplement companies. They sell it to the supplement companies and then they put the rest into to give them to the spice companies. So if you're just using like cooking turmeric, you can't necessarily count on the active.
But it'll taste good because I put it on my lamb. It is good with lamb. I just did a 3-pound lamb roast, and I had lamb for 2 days straight with turmeric, and it was just so good. It's an interesting thing with turmeric with me because I've been using it like as you've been using. We have a company that we really trust that has like their turmeric that's kind of like it's the powder, but it's like you have to look at how much curcumin is in there, and nice. I can't deny all of the people that they say that they're helped with turmeric. And so I've been doing jujitsu. And of course, I'm always getting my elbows moving and my shoulders in different directions. And so I've been using a lot of it. And I think I feel better. There's it's crazy because you see some of the literature and it's like, well, turmeric it's not absorbed in the blood. And so it's like, well, okay, if it's not absorbed, there has to be something.
Yeah, because it does help.
It does help. Either I don't know if it's a placebo or something, but people are definitely swearing by it. So I'm doing it, regardless of reading.
So turmeric requires a pepper extract to be absorbed. So most capsules have black pepper extract added to it.
Oh, so that's what it is.
And if you see drinks,
that's good to know.
Drinks will normally use cayenne pepper. It doesn't have to be black pepper. It could be any pepper. So if you're cooking with it, awesome. You're probably adding pepper to your rub, right? So
definitely.
You're already helping with absorption there. But if you're buying a capsule, you would want to make sure that it has black pepper extract in it or some sort of pepper extract.
That is so good to know. That's been something
now I'm going to have to go check after this to go make sure the one that I have.
Yeah, because that's in the back of our mind. That's been in the back of our mind.
Black pepper extract in their capsules.
Well, that makes sense then.
That's good. You just honestly, you solved the problem for us that we were thinking in the back of our mind.
We were always skeptical because we were like, wait, if it's not absorbed, how is it working?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's probably why then, because you need pepper.
Yeah.
You would think that the people designing these studies would know these things.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Good to know. It's really good to know.
I can't walk after my ultras without turmeric, so I'm a huge fan of it. But
and I have.
You have to take enough of it. So
we have a really good friend.
500 milligrams. I don't see a difference. I'm going to stop taking it. I'm usually recommending between 1,000 and 4,000 milligrams a day. And I told that the surgeon was going up to 8, and I've gone up to 9 before in a day. I never take more than 2,000 milligrams at once because it does have a slight blood thinning effect. I'll feel like my skin's crawling, kind of like having too much MCT oil or something.
Okay. So you spread it out.
Yeah, I just spread it out throughout the day.
You know what?
Have you been feeling that way?
No, listen to this. You're going to love this.
Danny's like, no wonder.
You're going to love this. You're going to love this because we might have identified what's been happening the last night and this morning. So I have been hitting the turmeric hard the last couple of days, right? So, and last night during jujitsu, or yesterday morning during jujitsu, I had a nosebleed.
Oh no!
And it's
yeah,
totally it.
That's it.
And it happened again this morning. And obviously the weather has changed a little bit, so it's cooled down, quote unquote, cooled down. It's in like the 40s and 50s right now, and my nose was bleeding this morning as well, and that would possibly explain why my nose is bleeding.
Yep.
I think we got to spread out the dose.
So I was already looking at doing a teaspoon of turmeric in my ground beef as soon as we finished talking here. And I was like, dang it, I can't do a whole teaspoon. Okay.
I sometimes am like running late and I'll throw back my fish oil with my turmeric as well. And I've gotten nosebleeds doing that too.
Interesting.
So fish oil, garlic, and turmeric, and even ginger, they all have slight blood thinning effects. They're all anti-inflammatory. So definitely I watch like coupling those or doing too much of any of them at once.
And I have, interestingly enough, like one of the meters that I use, when you get your blood sugar, it gives you your hemoglobin and hematocrit. And mine, when I know that mine are high, it's usually, I think it's because I'm not as hydrated. So it kind of like,
that makes sense.
It's basically like a false high for me. And so I'm like, dang it, I need to drink more. But, I have a lot of blood volume, I think, in general, just because, I guess my body needs it, and I eat a ton of iron from the steak and beef that I eat. So, so this is really cool stuff. So we have been, obviously, we've done a lot of stuff. Maura has been a vegetarian. We've done If It Fits Your Macros.
I was paleo.
But yeah, we nowadays, just to give you an idea, Brittany, of where we are, is like we've been keto for 2.5 years, but we have been wanting to, and this is what we've been doing in the past several months with our boys, is going back to our paleo roots and looking at all the things we loved about paleo, which, paleo is more focused on the quality of the food.
Right.
And we think that the most beautiful combination is this keto and paleo, where, you may be, eating low carb, but you're eating whole foods, more ancient type of foods, I guess you would call it, as much as possible. Ancestral foods. And it's interesting to note that, sometimes when you do that, the carbohydrate goes up, but the ability to regulate your appetite is so much better.
Absolutely.
With this approach. Our boys, like, we have, and of course we have a little bit of a following. And so people are always sending us these products that are sweetened.
Sure.
And, when we have those, I'm a monster. Like I cannot regulate myself because
they're
the sweeteners
to be addicting.
They're so much sweeter than sugar, than actual, like a grade B maple syrup that you put in a recipe, that you put a tablespoon in a recipe that has like 10 servings. You're adding like, 1.5 grams of sugar per serving, but it's less sweet, and you have that less of that psychosomatic response to the sweetness.
Right.
And so that's what we've been telling people. But what do you think? So we have the big, I guess, the big ones that are popular are paleo, keto, carnivore. What do you think? I think we talked a little bit about keto. What do you think are some of the things that people should focus on with these other diets that they may be overlooking?
Or even vegan.
That's huge. Vegan, of course, is, interestingly enough, this year, vegan only, there was a study that they did, they took a survey, and in this survey, it was thousands and thousands of people. Like there was only like 2 or 3% that said that they were going to go vegan. So it isn't that big, but I think the fact that it's a very loud movement,
it's so popular.
Yeah. And so what are these deficiencies? They don't show up right away. So if someone is aware of them at the beginning, maybe they can kind of forego some of the bad things that happen over time. Can you just think about a few of, okay, if you're going to eat all meat, what are the few things you can think about? Right. And the same thing, the opposite, vegan.
Right. Well, I was explaining to somebody today earlier in a consultation, she wanted to go more Atkins route, so more of like a carnivore, I would say, higher protein, still pretty high or moderate fat, and then low carb. Any lower carb is going to have the potential for the same deficiencies as we talked about earlier. Yeah. So your B vitamins, those that are like premenopausal would still need iron if they're eliminating proteins, like meat proteins. That's more for like the vegan population, I would say, than the carnivore. But I would say the keto and paleo mix is kind of where I'm at now too. It's still higher fat.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. I never, when I started transitioning back and adding carbohydrates, they were whole foods. I never really added grains back. I just once they were eliminated and I went to bring them back, I could tell such a big difference when I put them back that I was just like, I don't really want these frequently. So I am more like sweet potatoes and more whole foods now, and I feel better that way. And I also try to stay away from carbs at nighttime. I slept so well on keto. I didn't need as much sleep, it didn't feel like. And so I wanted those same benefits with just a little bit more carbs. So I have like berries now and some of those whole carbohydrate vegetables. So I really love that.
I have a friend. I have a friend who he started adding carbs back in as well, and he has an Oura ring, and now I have an Oura ring too. I'm obsessed. Mm-hmm. And his HRV went down when he would have, and his sleep quality went down when he would have the carbs at night. So it does make sense if you have the luxury of training in the morning or training midday to put those carbs there and then kind of not eat them at night. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
Not to include those.
We'll be talking, I have a workshop next week on intermittent fasting. Same sort of benefits in many ways. But with that same thinking about nighttime, and then if you are able to do fast in the morning, if your schedule allows that, there's so many benefits to that as well.
And the other cool thing about the not eating at night or at least cutting it off early, there was this one study I saw, I think it was from last year, looking at, postprandial blood sugar responses to the same meal at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. and it was higher in the evening. Yeah. So it's kind of probably part of our circadian rhythm where we are not meant to eat that late. We're supposed to sleep when the sun goes down. Right. And, so it makes sense to, the harder intermittent fasting is the one where you possibly start your eating maybe a little bit earlier, like a 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and finish it earlier. Most of us like to do like a 12 to 8 p.m.
Right.
or something like that, or an 11 to 7. But it would seem that if you can mentally handle it, that it would probably be beneficial to do like kind of an earlier feeding window.
Right. And I've seen more research that men benefit from the longer, like 16 hour, and women start having hormonal changes if they go that long consistently. So women see more success around the 12 to 14 hour range than the 16.
It's important to know those differences. Ali Miller, we always talk about her. Gosh, we're always bringing her up.
Yeah.
But she's always talking about that too, because, you have this one size fits all, like do this, do that. And then people don't pay attention to their bodies. And there could be that dysregulation that happens with like a longer fast or even, around the cycle. Mm-hmm. What could happen if that's why Maura, she's had a lot of success.
I had to add carbs around my cycle.
Some dates or...
however, she did say to do them
at night.
Why that would be.
Or in the afternoon.
I did see that on her Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
she posted it yesterday too. Somebody had shared. Yeah,
but it's for hormonal purposes, so I don't know why she would. There's got to be a reason, but it's everyone has to. You got to listen to your body, and it's true. Sometimes with the more extended fast, I don't feel as
well
so
either.
I kind of just listen to my body. If I'm like starving, I'm like, dude,
I'm
not gonna just fast.
Eat if you're hungry.
For no reason.
Don't. This is what we talk about with mindful eating. Is like don't go off of these environmental things where it's like the time of day or, who you're with or what the occasion is. Go off of your actual hunger, especially if you're eating a low carb or a ketogenic diet, you'll actually be more sensitive to real hunger signals.
Right.
So,
and there's still benefits to intermittent fasting cycles, just like there are with any other of the diets. You're helping your body to work more efficiently. So even if you're doing it a couple of days a week versus every single day, you're still providing benefits to your body.
Great point.
Great. You mentioned in your bio how you did some work with like K through 5 nutrition.
Yes.
And I think it's very obvious at this point that probably the most malnourished people on planet Earth are our children, because just the marketing towards it's almost criminal. Like the marketing with the crap processed food, it's just getting these kids. I mean, and I see it with my kids' friends. I'm just like the amount of sugar these kids have just before 8 a.m. is kind of scary. So what do you suggest? What do you think is the most important thing for children, child nutrition? Like what are the main goals here? Fat, protein, like what about carbs? Like, do they have a place? What do you think about all that?
Right. Well, my biggest experience with K through 5 was a community initiative in Detroit. And I was going into Detroit public schools for a good 2 school years. And it was a 8-week program where I would teach like a nutrition topic. We would make a healthy snack and we'd exercise together. And the point of the program was actually not educating the kids. It was actually supposed to educate their parents. And so we did pre and post surveys, and the surveys actually went home to the parents. Like, yes, the kids learned so much, but it was amazing at the post surveys that the parents actually learned more about nutrition from hearing how excited the kids came home with topics and information than that the kids actually did. So they were learning and they were requesting healthier foods because they were being introduced to it at school. And then the parents felt like obligated or felt good about going to buy fruit because the child brought it up. So it was definitely a different approach. But if you think about that, our children are constantly watching and listening to everything that we do. And if we can take care of ourselves, we're automatically taking care of our kids because they're watching us and listening to us all the time. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned from that program was that we have such an influence, whether we're teachers or coaches or the actual parents. Our kids are going to eat what we're provided many years, right? And then I remember my mom and everything that she did nutritionally in our household. And that has always been with me and it'll never leave. So it starts when we're little. We start getting those habits very early on.
Yeah, we that's a big thing for us is because people, the first thing we always hear
is I always say, model the behavior that you want to see.
But they always tell us, picky, my kid's picky, as if your kid is special. They're all picky.
Right. Exactly.
And they're all picky. They're all picky when they're eating that way. I'm picky when I'm eating that way. It creates that vicious
that hedonic
cycle.
response from
it's just they don't randomly pull out their request without it being presented to them somewhere. So they didn't ever ask for French fries because they didn't have them on their plate somehow, right?
Right. Exactly. They found out about them somehow.
Yes.
Exactly. They only know what you put in front of them. And it is so true because like our oldest, I mean, when he was born, we were hardcore paleo. Mm-hmm. It's stuck with him. Like this kid is he's so good. Mm-hmm. Like the way he eats, he craves real foods. He likes real foods. He appreciates real flavors. And you have to start them when they're little and you can still change it. It doesn't have to be, if your kids are older, but you also have to model it first. Like that's what I tell parents. I'm like, if you want your kids to get healthy, you get healthy.
Absolutely.
And just talk about it, talk to them about it, model it and be vocal about the changes that you're making.
Absolutely.
So that's so important.
Well, I think I didn't know if I wanted to ask this one or not, but I'm going to ask it anyways, because I feel like there's a few things that like, you spoke about grains and for us, I guess the most as politically correct as you can be, because I do think that like there's a few things that, for a lot of different people are going to be harmful. And, for us, grains is one of them. Yeah. Like non-negotiable foods. Like what are some of the ones that you would say, it's just the risk benefit ratios. It's just the risk benefit is just not there. It just doesn't, the benefits don't outweigh the risks. Do you have any foods that, or things to look out for that people can think about that say, you know what, no matter what, if this is presented to me, I will not eat it. I should not eat it.
I'm sure things slip through the cracks all the time, but if I start seeing like colors and things, and it's an automatic, like dyes, like red 40, yellow, blue, like there's so many, like even surprisingly supplements, that surprisingly like capsules have, like, why is there sugar in a capsule that I'm swallowing? So there's like little things like that sneak in, and it's so important to read ingredient lists. If I don't know what something is, or it sounds like a metal, like I don't really want to eat titanium dioxide. It's in our deodorant. So why is it in foods? Not sure. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So little things like that. If it doesn't sound right to be in the food, I shouldn't be putting it in my body.
Love it.
I know that many things are, and this is a conversation back and forth with, but sucralose is I'm not a fan of sucralose.
Neither are we. We used to eat it, but we stopped. Yep.
Yeah. There are a lot of supplements, but there are also a lot of supplements that are starting to like use stevia more. I'm more of a fan of stevia than I am sucralose. There's just too many studies that it can mess with our good digestive flora. And when there's already so much inflammation in many of our bodies, we don't need to add more to it.
Yeah, it's a good one because it's in a lot of the sugar-free syrups.
It's in a lot of supplements.
Mass-produced, supplements, like and mass-produced sugar-free stuff. When a big food company does something sugar-free, it's usually going to use like a sucralose or another one of these artificial ones. And we've seen the same thing, like with compromised gut health, and but unfortunately, people are, everybody's got a blood sugar meter now, so and they're like, well, look at my blood sugar. Sure. That's not the only
so that
thing.
Doesn't tell you that your gut. What about your gut?
Yeah. I would say that I'm not a fan of soy, mostly because it's so hard to find organic soy. So unless I would say about 95 to 98% of the soy crop is GMO. And so that's one that I usually will stay away from. Same with corn. Not a fan of it unless I can find an organic option.
And that's the thing too with the erythritol is like you're getting this like probably very probable, GMO corn used derived erythritol. And it's just why bother? What I totally agree. The soy thing, I think some people do well with like fermented like natto.
Yep.
But the all the links to the carcinogenic. And it's since it's an isoflavone, I think it's harder for our body versus like a flax, like a lignin. Apparently, our body breaks that down easier. And we have so many estrogenic compounds that are like reacting. Yes. It's in our water, in the plastics. So like adding one more, it's just oof.
There are a lot of great benefits to soy. I remember all of the research in my phytochemicals class, but I won't touch it if it's not non-GMO. And there's a lot of just research. If you've ever had breast cancer, you shouldn't be anywhere near soy. Anything really that any hormonal cancers should stay away from it.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, those are some good ones. Well, we're running long. So, Brittany, we wanted to just thank you. First of all, we want to ask you if people wanted to either look you up, get in touch with you, what are a few ways that people can find you?
If you want them to.
Yes,
if you want them to. Yeah, exactly.
So my Vitamin Shop email is brittany.michels, Michels, no A, at vitaminshop.com. So if there's any questions, especially like Vitamin Shop supplements, you can reach out to me that way. My Instagram handle is BAMICHELS. And then my specific store is vitaminshop_Algonquin. And if anyone's in the area, which I'm not sure they are, my link to consultations in person is on my Instagram and also on the Algonquin Vitamin Shop Instagram as well.
I'll grab that. Cool. I'll grab that and I'll put it in the show notes.
Awesome.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Brittany. You guys take care. Check Brittany out if you have any questions, and we'll see you next week.